Sadly, I am in a really, really loud apartment, so I do not have such a great audio experience. But I'm sure we'll have a fantastic conversation today. I am super excited that I get to talk to you, Renee. Renee Beck is a senior strategic marketing professional who's worked at agencies, corporations, startups, and now she's at a nonprofit. She's also a hiker, a runner, a traveler. We'll get to that in a bit. But welcome, Renee, and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I love talking all things marketing and I love empowering women. So this feels like a fantastic conversation to be having today.
Awesome. Yes, perfect. And I love that it's no longer Women's History Month, but we are still talking about women in marketing because it is an evergreen topic for sure.
As we should be.
Yes. Yes. So Renee, your first actual nonprofit role is the one that you're currently in, which is the Vice President of Marketing and Innovation at United Way of Central Maryland. Tell me about that journey, because not many of us have made the jump from corporate America to startup to nonprofit.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. It's one of the things I share most when I talk to people about my career, because when people talk about pivoting, I have pivoted so much in the types of organizations that I work with. So I've been doing PR and marketing, communications my whole career, but I started at an agency. I then moved into a large corporation, then had an opportunity to join a local startup. I'm based in Baltimore City in Central Maryland. I had an opportunity to join a local small growing startup and moved to another startup. And then I was actually doing a little consulting too. So I've done some consulting myself and had an opportunity with United Way of Central Maryland. This opportunity came to me to lead up this team of amazing marketers and bring some of that for-profit knowledge that I had and really think about things a little bit differently in a nonprofit space. And it's been really fun. I've been here 3.5 years. I love it. I have just the most amazing team, and I feel like we've been doing some pretty cool things in the nonprofit space. And I get the privilege of being part of the larger United Way Worldwide organization, which is just a fantastic network to be a part of too.
That's awesome. It's awesome because as marketers, you don't always get to work on things that you feel good about. So it's so great that you get to do that every single day.
Yeah.
And so about that transition, like what type of skills do you take with your to your new role from corporate America? Like what's something, because I'm sure they hired you because of your sort of business acumen and experience. So what is different? What special sauce do you bring?
It was interesting when this job came to me. Someone who introduced me to the organization was actually someone who I'd worked with in the startup environment. Fantastic, startup leader in the Baltimore area. And what she said to me when she sent this job to me was, "I know this isn't your normal wheelhouse." And that was, she said right up front, "I know this isn't your normal, something you would probably normally be interested in. But I think what you can do is bring your previous experience to the organization and just help them continue to think digitally first, innovatively, really be thinking forward like that." So that's what I try to bring. I try to think about things with a little bit more of a business mindset. I think about people as, our donors, they're our customers, they're people, but then we also have customers in the people who we are helping. So we have two different audiences who we're talking to. And I think about them in that way, like we talk about audience segmentation and thinking about those things. We do, when you talk about email marketing, we do A/B testing. When we talk about social media, we're looking at the analytics. Like there are a lot of those things that a lot of nonprofits are doing now, but might not always be the first thought. But one thing that I think has been different is I focus a lot more on just brand awareness now than I did before. I think before it was always so much about just the bottom line. A lot of what I worked in was e-com, and so it was sales.
The sale. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And of course, now sales for us are donations, which is huge and we need them and you should all donate. It's a fantastic organization. But so much of it is just letting people know about the work that we do and really making sure we have that brand awareness. And I have a strong background in PR, so it plays really well into the work that I've loved doing my whole career too.
Perfect. I love it. I guess because there are so many places where you can give, like donate your money and time. And so how do you make United Way stand out? And it's interesting because I never thought as innovation as something that would lend itself to like corporate giving and, donor and personal giving, but I could see how it could be super important. So I feel like you probably honed a lot of your skills at the startup.
Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit about that because I feel like that is a unique experience. Not all of us get a chance to work for a startup. And, unfortunately, the way they portray it on TV, there's a lot of gender dynamics at play at startups. And so I'm curious about your experience there and if that were true for you. And, how long ago was that? I guess I'm curious as to how long ago that was, because I'm wondering, has there been any evolution in that space from your thoughts?
That's a great question. So my first startup, I started there 8 years ago. So, a little while ago. There definitely were some moments where, as a female in a startup, I felt like maybe I wasn't treated the same way, maybe I wasn't compensated the same way. I think it was more of a lack of education too. I just didn't know the startup world. And no one took the time to kind of educate me and help me understand what it meant to get stock options, what it would mean. The startup that I was at was ultimately acquired by a public company. So those options that I had became real. And I didn't know what it meant when I got that offer, when all of those kind of things, I just didn't understand. It wasn't part of my world before. I've been incredibly fortunate to have a team. It's my team of mentors, many of whom are from my first startup because we came up in it together, and they're all women because we were in a very similar situation. We were all trying to find our way and figure out, as women in this field, in this industry, how can we stand out? How can we show our worth? How can we make sure that everyone sees the work that we're doing and appreciates it? So had a fantastic group. I really say it's peer mentors. I've had some mentors who are older than me. Yeah.
Yes, I love it.
Everyone thinks of mentorship as people who are much older than you or much more experienced than you. I have just this phenomenal team of peer mentors, and they are, I was just texting with them yesterday. They're my group of women who I text and say, I have a marketing question, or I'm trying to hire and this is what I'm looking for. They're just people who I bounce ideas off of all the time and test out new things on them. But we really came up in this startup environment together. None of us had worked in startups before, and we just rallied around each other and figured it out. And then one of the women who was my boss at that startup, she Heather Fields, if you're watching, she taught me strength finders. If you've ever taken the different types of tests, different types of personality tests, things like that, strength finders is this amazing one that helps you hone in on your strengths, because she told me, stop focusing on your weaknesses. Don't worry about what you can't do. Find someone who can help you do those. If you're not good at math and you can't figure out the data, it's okay, there's a whole data team. She taught me really to focus on my strengths. And I think that mentorship that I really learned from a startup, like that education, was just phenomenal. You were doing everything as it happened, and there was no time to really slow down. You were in action.
That's such fantastic advice. Just, focus on your strengths. And I think I'm like self-deprecating by nature. Okay, I'm recovering self-deprecating person, because I too had someone to say, stop doing that. People see something else other than what you see, and just like hone in on your strengths. And it's such good advice, and I just wish more, especially young professional women, can get that earlier in their career, because I feel like it's almost like the opposite of how we grow up as girls. You almost like you want to fit in. I have a son who's in 5th grade now. He's a boy. But still, he feels the pressure to be like everyone else. And for girls, that's especially true. And just, showing girls, women, young professional women, especially, to like take up space, to be, to be bold, to lean into their strengths is such great advice. And it takes some undoing, it takes multiple times for you to hear that, for you to actually believe that and make a plan.
Yeah.
So,
and that's what I tell women now. I've taken that with me, and I try to tell women now, focus on what you're good at. There are people, figure out the story that you need to tell. Again, for me, it's math. I'm not good at math. I did not do well in math. And I would say that when I was trying to work on analytics and things like that and reporting. And that's what she said. She said, stop saying that you're not good at math. Just stop. Figure out what's the story that you want to tell with the data, and then go to the data team, talk them through it. And so I became great friends with the data team, and I learned so much. I learned so much from them, things that I didn't even know I could be telling stories about, they taught me. So it also really helped me, I think, reach out to other people and remind myself that I don't have to know everything, and I don't have to do everything.
100%.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, and just also like your strength is storytelling, which to the mathematician is something that they could never do, right? Like everyone has their superpower. So just find what it is. So mentors. So you mentioned peer mentorships, which I love so much. And I think my COO has like a personal board of directors. I don't know that I've ever thought about it that way, but I definitely have a group of women that I started out with at the New York Times many moons ago. I think there's something about being a certain age in like kind of a pressure cooker type situation that bonds you. Not a bad pressure cooker, just a pressure cooker. And it's so great because it's similar in that everyone is doing different things now, but I know 100% that I can lean on them and reach out to them and get specific advice on work related stuff, on personal related stuff, and it's just fantastic. So more of that for sure, but also mentorships with women who are more advanced in their careers in any one direction. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that if you're a COO, that your boss has been a COO for 10 years. But maybe it's a strength that you don't have, and someone who's like a little bit more senior, but there's value in those relationships as well. And how would you suggest going about finding a mentor?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think for myself, most of my mentors have really been people who I've worked with, but I have also found, being maybe a part of networking groups. I just joined a women's networking group and leadership development group. That's been a fantastic way to meet some potential new mentors. Even just within your own community, like I mentioned, I'm kind of involved in the Baltimore startup community. That's been a space. The person who recommended me for the role that I'm in, she was not a boss of mine or a previous employer of mine, but just someone who I'd worked with in the startup space. And she really became someone who I leaned on to help me make some decisions, help me think through different things. So I think it's maybe finding people who are in a space that you are in, whether that's if you have an interest in marketing, you have an interest in startups, finding someone in that space. And most people, I can't speak for everyone, but most people are pretty open to it. People, I love talking to people. I did not exactly mentoring, but I did a talk just this past Monday night for some students who are graduating from a local university. And they asked me to come and share some career tips, things like that. And I was joking that I hope they don't find my TikTok and find that I'm just a lurker and I don't actually post. A little embarrassed, but they were fantastic though. And I told them, I said, reach out to me. If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. So I think of what would I want from people, how would I want people to approach me and share advice with me? And I try to do the same for people who might look to me in that way, which is always flattering too. I always think if someone's interested in my career in any way, I'm happy to talk about it.
Yeah, I love it. It's like, and pay it forward because you want to be, or, in service, just like someone was in service for you, like your old boss who asked you to focus on your strengths.
Yeah.
So I want to go back a little bit, and maybe this is sort of like dovetails to the mentorship discussion, but like I'm thinking about equity and pay equity, especially as it relates to women in general. And I'm wondering, do you talk to your peer mentors or, other mentors about salary? Like, what's that conversation like? Have you seen any evolvement in the discussion in the past few years, like based, versus like when you first started out?
Yeah, absolutely. I have fought very hard for myself to get where I am salary wise. I was the person who was probably a little annoying early on, and every 6 months or so going to my boss or to someone else and saying, here are all the things I did, and not just I expected. I would bring the research, I would do the salary research, I would look at the data, I would bring the work that I did to show that I should be at that level, and somewhat recently, really feel like I am now, and truly feel like I'm compensated for the work that I do, and feel really grateful to have gotten to that place. It's a little funny when I realized it's like, oh, okay, I feel good about this. After
How did that? I love that so much. I was the exact opposite, unfortunately. How did you start? Like, what was that first conversation like? Or what was the situation when you said to yourself, I need to ask for more money here?
I think if I think back on it very quickly, it was probably right around the time, and this was almost 15 years ago at this point. I mean, we're talking 13, 14 years ago. I thought that I was going to receive a promotion. I had heard through the grapevine that I was going to. And when they were announced, it didn't happen. And that was very frustrating for me, because I truly felt like I had earned it. So I think I took that as an opportunity to really try to understand, why was I not getting that promotion? Why was that, why was that pay increase not happening? And really said, I need to advocate for myself. I tell people one of my top pieces of advice is that no one is going to advocate more for you than you. Unfortunately, that's harder for some people than others for a variety of reasons, not even just yourself. Right. There are a lot of barriers that are in place for a lot of people. But I just did what I could. Like I said, I started to pull together the numbers. I said, here's what I've done in my work. Here are the actual numbers. Here's the engagement that I can show. Here's the work that I have done. And then here are the actual salary comps. I would look at Glassdoor and salary.com and Indeed and all of those, and do the research and say, I really feel like this is the level that I should be at. It's very interesting now being on the other side of it and having a team often coming to me and saying the same things. So I see, it's not always your decision too, as a manager. I think that was something that right. I didn't know early on. It is not always my decision. I wish that sometimes I could do more, but it's not always the decision of the manager. And that was something that I didn't know back then, but I would just kind of be consistent, and every, like I said, every 6 months to a year, going saying, this is my updated presentation, basically.
I love it.
Yeah.
Like clockwork.
Yeah.
So first of all, I love that it started with a setback, because that's fantastic. I think all good leadership moments, right, start with a setback.
Yeah.
And how was it? So the first time, you didn't get the promotion, you felt wrong, so you made your presentation. How was it received the first time?
It's always been received really well. I will say I've never had someone say to me flat out no, or flat out, this just, there have been the reasons of, we can't do this right now. The company is in a certain place. This is not the time for it. But I've never been discouraged, which I think has also really kept me going. There's never been someone who said, you shouldn't have brought this to me, or someone who came to me on the side and said, you really shouldn't have done that. I've never had a boss either who has discouraged me from having those conversations. So I think that being open and transparent about it has been really helpful. And again, I know that's just not comfortable for people, but again, no one's going to advocate more for you than you. No one is going to just say, you know what, let's just give her more money.
Yeah, no, sure.
Like
a closed mouth never gets fed. And
yes.
I mean, I wish I would have talked to you like when I was first starting out, but I definitely did just sort of wait for people to give me more money, like for a very long time. And in my estimate, it worked out okay. Like, but in retrospect, it probably didn't, you know? And I don't know. I don't know what it was. I just always felt like they'd be fair and they're gonna compensate me properly. But then again, having no visibility into what other people were making.
Yes.
And I think that's the rub, right? Like, I know there's some legislation in the EU where they're talking about pay transparency. We certainly are far away from adopting that in the United States. But I wonder, like, you know, how would that have changed my movements if, as a young professional, when knowing that the person sitting in the next cube is making, you know, a third more than me.
Sure. Yeah, I do think those conversations, even if you can't have them with your colleagues, if you have friends who are comfortable, it is funny that we're talking about this. I actually had a friend text me this morning and said she'd had a fantastic first interview this morning, and she was telling me very openly about the salary range that they proposed, and she was so excited about it. You know, I'm texting her Beyonce gifts, like, get your paper, basically. I was like, get that bread. Like, yes, please. It just made me really, really excited to know that she was being paid her worth and that she felt comfortable talking to me about it. You know, I think she felt comfortable with me knowing about it, and that I would be honest with her back if I thought that was too low or too high or anything. You know, she kind of said, what do you think? And yes, that is the right amount. Yes, you deserve that. Like, yes, you should be doing that. And there is a little bit of sometimes discomfort in it too. I think when you get to a certain place, you may not have friends who are in that same place. If you are comfortable and happy with the salary that you're making, you may not have friends and colleagues and others who are. So there is a little bit of that awkwardness too at some point when you're like, well, I actually feel pretty content and happy. And you hear a lot of people around you not. And there is a little bit of that hesitation to share sometimes too. I think we're always much more open to share when we're unhappy with where we are. The venting is easier than the celebration.
Yeah, it's true. I could see how it could be a little awkward, like knowing salaries. But sometimes I feel like it's necessary for you to negotiate for yourself. But I'm wondering, like, how many people share what their salary is? So for example, you know, like, what's the right way to ask for, like, say for someone, you know, if there's a job or that you think is comparable, like maybe it's like HR director or something like that. So a different industry, you know, is it appropriate ever to ask someone for their salary just to do some market research, and how uncomfortable is that for the recipient of that?
I don't think there's harm in asking. I think know your audience first. I mean, know what you're asking. If you're asking a friend, you know, understand your friendship and their level of comfort with something like that. If you're asking a colleague or someone else in the industry, you know, I think knowing who you're talking to first. But I think there's no harm in asking. I wish more people talked about money openly and just talked in general about benefits and other things like that. Like, just helping people understand what your total compensation actually means. And really, again, empowering people to say, okay, I've done the research, I've looked at things, like, this is the number that I feel comfortable with. And you might not always get it. And that's then where you have to decide, okay, I asked other people, I did my own research, they're offering me this amount. I always say negotiate. I would never expect someone to not negotiate. And then you have to decide at that point, you know, is this something that you want enough to either take the lower salary that they're offering, or you say no, and that's just not something that I can do. And a lot of that depends, really some of the best advice I ever received. It was so simple. I was deciding what I wanted to do in terms of this role. I'd actually been offered a role at the same time, heading up national PR for a very large corporation that had kind of grown from a startup. And I was just deciding what to do. And she said, you just have to do what is right for you and your family right now. Financially, stability, all of those things, like taking all of those things into consideration, just do. And my family is myself and my husband. I don't have children. She said, what is right for you right now? And it was funny, without that advice, I might have taken the other role. And I don't think that was what was right for me then. But just her saying that simple thing. Yeah. And again, that's that group of those peer mentors, someone just saying those simple things to you and making you kind of check it and say, so again, going back to the salary, I think it might be the right role for you then, and it might not be the salary that you're happy with, and that could be okay. And you can work toward that and setting that expectation early on. I'm so excited about this role. I want to take this. Here's where I'm hoping to be. Here's where I'd like to be in a year. Just having those conversations, I think, is really important. Or if you get a really high salary offer, but again, you don't feel like it's the right fit, don't take it because of the money, like just because of the money.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like you're not just your job, right? Like all of these things about your life kind of factor into the total comp package and everything else. And I feel like COVID has definitely taught us that we're more, and it's shown companies that we're more than just people that come and sit at a desk and deliver on X, and then they go home into a vacuum and no one ever, they plug in to like a robot plugs in. But you now, see families in the background, or dogs, or, whatever the situation, even, grandparents or parents that you're taking care of or that happen to be in the space. How do you think COVID has changed things? And now that we're a couple of years away, how do you think, have things reverted back? Are there some things that you want to see more of? I'm just sort of curious about that evolution in your mind.
I've seen a lot more sympathy and empathy, I think. Mm-hmm. Higher levels of understanding. I had in this position, I had a previous boss left a few months ago, and I got to see her son grow up on Zoom. He was about a year old, I think, when we went into the pandemic, maybe not even quite that old. And I got to watch him until recently, when she moved on to another role, and it was amazing. And he knew me, we would say hi and we talked to each other on Zoom. And I think that it just, for your supervisor, it made me just so much more aware of everything else she had going on and just everything else that was happening in her life. And then for my own team, it really, made me, especially those with families and those with young kids, realize you're juggling so much right now. I am fortunate enough because I don't have kids. It's just me here. It's my husband is sometimes here, and I have 2 cats that are roaming around, but that's about it. And I think it really opened my eyes to how much other people had going on that we weren't aware of before. Like you said, it was just it was a vacuum before. We came to work, we parked, we went into an office. That was our life there, and we knew people had significant others and children and pets and things, but it just wasn't part of their whole that we knew. And now we're aware of that. And I just see people having, again, fortunate, I don't know if this is just nonprofit or my organization specifically, but I've seen policies change. We changed our policy early on in the pandemic to being able to work remotely 1 day a week to being full-time remote with your supervisor's permission. So even they made that call very early on in 2020 for whenever we did go back to the office, this was something that people could do. So to see people,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, to see those policy changes happen so quickly was really amazing. They also modified our maternity and paternity leaves, things like that. I think.
How so? Talk to me about that.
I won't lie. I don't know the specifics just because.
Okay.
Applied to me.
No, it's fine.
But actually some members of my team were the ones, two mothers on my team were the ones who kind of spearheaded it and took it to the head of the organization. So that was fantastic too. They came to me and they said, do you mind if we kind of take the time to do this? I said, absolutely not. Like, please go, fight for something that you think is important. So that was really cool too, just to see them kind of stand up and fight for something they really believed in. So I don't know exactly how it changed.
No, that's okay.
It obviously added paid time to policy, and that was huge. And I don't
change them. Sorry, go on, please.
I was just saying, I don't think we had a paternity policy at all, from my understanding, and so that was added, and then the maternity leave was, it built up essentially more than it had been.
It's so important for men to take off time too, and then also, so at my last company, I worked for OMD, a major agency, and they changed a lot of rules, even extended with parental leave to just parents. So like, for example, you didn't have to be a biological parent. You could be, you could be a gay couple and take off leave, which seems to be a no-brainer, but it just wasn't enshrined in the policy. And I think that's true for many companies, and a lot of companies have made some significant changes, which is so fantastic. And companies seem to be listening to employees more so than they have in the past. And I think in large part because we can actually see, you can see into the lives of your people, and then you just make different choices based on that.
And I think sometimes you show up differently on video, on Zoom. You're willing to be maybe a little more vulnerable than you would be. Than you would have been in person. So I think I saw a lot more of that with my team too, and was able to understand more of what was going on, because you weren't putting on that persona necessarily of employee in the office. You could be a little more open, share a little more. Speaking of maternity and paternity leave, I had 2 women on my team who were on maternity leave at the same time last fall. And as a manager, it was very, very, very hard. But as a manager and a human, I wish they could have taken more time. I mean, honestly, I wish that was something that could have happened, because to see people come back and to see them kind of, handing off their babies and watch it on video, it was hard for me. So I tried to do everything I could, at least, and say, please ease in slowly, sign off if you need to for a while, do what you need to do, because that was just very raw and real, I think, to see it in more real time. Again, you just wouldn't have seen that in the office. There's a baby somewhere and I see some cute
right. You see pictures of them, perfectly styled pictures.
Exactly. This is baby's crying and needs something. So go sign off, go take care, come back when you can. And I think it's made, to really go back to your previous question, I just think it's hopefully made everyone just much more sympathetic and empathetic and just flexible. I think is really the thing too, just more flexible. We have lives.
We do. I love that, like the personal sort of growth thoughts and ideas that you have for your team. Are there any professional growths that you would like to see for your team in the near future? Yes,
definitely. So I inherited my whole team at United Way of Central Maryland. They have all been there longer than me, and they're phenomenal. If any of you are watching, we have hired 1 person on since I started, and are actually, we have a new employee starting in about 3 weeks. And then we have another open position that we're trying to work through exactly what's needed on the team. So
a growing team, amazing.
It's fantastic, but challenging at the same time. It's challenging to be doing all of those HR things. I had, again, the 2 women on maternity leave, had my former boss leave, had my first person on my team leave about a month ago for an amazing opportunity, and it was his time to make that move. But just a lot of changes, and I joke kind of that my life has just been HR for the past 9 months, because I feel like that's been what I've been doing. And I had a really interesting conversation, this women's leadership group that I'm a part of. And it's funny because you mentioned your board of directors. That is literally what they called us, our small, our like core group that we have. They're calling it the board of directors. And some of us were talking last night about the fact that being a manager itself is really a full-time job, like just being a manager. And then you have the work that you're
work to do. Yes.
Yeah. I don't get to just manage a team. I also have to do work and come up with ideas and strategize, and attend 100 meetings and all these things. So it's juggling that. So I think for my team, what I'm most excited about, and I've seen this happening, I've seen them just taking on more and more, getting excited about the work, stepping up to take on projects, just really owning it more. And I've seen myself proud of myself for being able to delegate a little bit more. That's always been very hard for me. My mindset has always just been like, I can just do it. And then, but
yes, faster. Yeah.
Right. And I don't have to teach someone. Well, that doesn't help anyone grow, first of all. It also then just buries me in the work, and I never can do anything if I can't, actually delegate some things to other people. So that's been a really good lesson to me. So I think I'm looking forward to the next year of growing our team, really being more, innovation is part of my role. So like, what is the next innovative thing that we do? What else are we building? We've built some amazing kind of virtual experiences, and we built a virtual community of our Central Maryland community, and done some cool things like that, again, I haven't seen a lot of nonprofits do. So I get very excited about that work and thinking about what's next.
I think there's something about like virtual experiences, Web3, the metaverse, that drives, it's innovative, but it drives empathy. Because it's like you're in an experience versus reading about it or watching it, like it's not two-dimensional. So I love that for United Way. I guess I just wanted to ask a question about your customers. You have customers of folks that you help, but then you also have like your donors and philanthropists. And I'm wondering the role of women in both groups. Can you talk a little bit about like both those customer bases?
Sure. So, we do see on the side of those who we help, United Way really focuses on a group that we call ALICE, which is asset limited, income constrained, employed. So it is essentially people who are working hard, often working 2 or 3 jobs, but are really struggling to make ends meet. So they, they're not necessarily unhoused. They are working, they have income coming in, but are still struggling to buy groceries every month or pay that rent or do anything like that. So, and it is a very large population. And you do see women, particularly during the pandemic, we hear a lot of stories from women who have been hit the most. We know that a lot of industries that were really hit during COVID are female dominant, in terms of employment, hospitality, thinking about cashiers, people who are working in a lot of the service. Healthcare, absolutely, healthcare. So a lot of people who are working in these service fields are really on that front line and are being incredibly impacted. And again, they're working 2-3 jobs to try to get by. So that and childcare, my goodness, like everything that is happening. Everything that's happening with childcare, it's exorbitantly expensive. They were, a lot of these women were left without childcare during the pandemic. It just has become this true crisis. And United Way of Central Maryland is actually doing a lot of work around that right now. We're launching some initiatives around childcare and really doing what we can there, because we've again seen it firsthand from those who we help. So that's one thing that we're working on. And then from the donor side, absolutely, women are powerhouse philanthropists, and it is amazing to see it. We were fortunate to receive a very large gift, the largest in our history, from Mackenzie Scott. She is—
That's amazing.
Yeah, has dedicated half. She signed the giving pledge to give half of her net worth away in her lifetime. And we were one of the first organizations that was a recipient of that back in December 2020. just the gift from the sky. I mean, it was unbelievable. We didn't know what was happening. No one knew what was happening. Her team vetted all of the organizations themselves and made these gifts, and just the impact that she was able to make in such a short amount of time was amazing. And she's continued to do it. And she's continued to say, this is not about me, which I think, you often see with women is, I don't need the credit. I don't need the accolades. She's very under the radar about it. I mean, when she announced it, she posted it on Medium. Like, that was the announcement.
I think that's a beautiful high note to unfortunately
100%.
have to leave it on.
Yes.
Women supporting other women, and fabulous organizations like the United Way supporting all of us. And so I just have to pop in, unfortunately, and say thank you to both of you.